The Honourable Phil Goff.
Mr Speaker, this bill, as the Minister has suggested, allows New Zealand to join a new international investment bank, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, and it serves to implement New Zealand's obligations under the Articles of Agreement. I want to say, sir, that Labor supports this bill because it supports New Zealand's involvement in the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, and we think that it's the right decision to do so, and for the right reason. Now, I say that, sir, because you will know that Labor does not support every government investment decision. In fact, if I could contrast this decision that's soundly based with the decision to make facilitation payments to the Saudi businessmen to enable New Zealand to try to get a free trade agreement, an agreement that was a disaster and a bribe, this agreement, by contrast, is a paragon of virtue, sir. Mr Speaker, Labor believes that the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank is a positive move and that the investment that we'll make in it will be soundly based. I've got to say that the issue was initially controversial because the United States made no secret of its opposition to this bank being established. It was opposed to the idea and directly and indirectly sought to influence other countries not to participate. The grounds for the United States doing that, sir, was that it first of all said that the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank adequately met the needs of investment in Asia. That, sir, is patently incorrect. In fact, if I was to quote the former New Zealand Treasury Secretary, Alan Bollard, who's now in the APEC Secretariat, he made the point quite clearly and very early on that there is absolutely huge demand for investment in infrastructure in Asia, and it was not being met by the established Bretton Woods institutions. Secondly, sir, the United States seem to argue that support for the bank would allow China to expand its influence. Well, it may do, sir, but it also has to be seen as incredibly naive to think that the world's second largest economy and a financial superpower in its own right does not have the ability and the right to expand its influence, sir. In fact, the United States, to some degree, has brought this on itself because the US Congress stood in the way of China exercising influence commensurate to its size in the IMF and the World Bank. And that's not a prejudiced comment from me. That's something that our Minister of Trade, Tim Grosser, acknowledged some months ago. Will China expand its influence? Well, China has 25 to 30% of the voting rights in this bank, but it is only one of 50 countries that currently will be a member of the bank. And it sits alongside other large countries, both developed and developing, like Britain, Germany, France and Italy and the Republic of Korea, Russia and other countries of that size. We, I think, made the right decision in becoming involved early in the negotiation of how this bank would be set up. We were the 24th country to join. That doesn't sound like we rushed into it, but we were in fact the world's first developed country to join those negotiations, and as a result we were able to influence the outcome of the negotiations. And I want to pay a particular tribute here, sir, to John Whitehead, known in this House as the former Secretary of Treasury and a person that I've known for the best part of 40 years, a person of incredible skill, experience and integrity. And I know from the feedback that I've got, sir, that John Whitehead did an extraordinarily good job in making sure that this institution follows international best practice for financial institutions. And we should be proud of the contribution that he has made, and the bank is better for that. As the Minister said, The Select Committee wasn't exactly swamped with submissions on this bill. In fact, we received no submissions. And maybe there's a subtle message to the government that if it wants to cut down submissions, you use the words international financial agreement in the title of a bill, and the average layperson says this is altogether too complex and we shouldn't go near it. It's not hugely complex, sir, but it is very important. And it's important to know what this bank will do. It's a multilateral investment bank, and what it's designed to do is to address the gap in infrastructure investment that exists in the Asian region. It seeks to foster sustainable economic development and to work with other institutions, other multinational institutions, to promote regional cooperation and partnership. And while the United States said that it wasn't really necessary, it was interesting that a former Minister of Trade, who I got to know and is now head of the International Monetary Fund, Christine Lagarde, has welcomed the establishment of this bank. Why should New Zealand be supporting it? Well, I think there's scarcely a member in this House that would not acknowledge that our future as a country is tied up very closely with the future of the Asia-Pacific region. It's our geographic location. It's where most of our largest trading partners are based, and it is a region that is important to us economically and politically, and we need to be seen to be involved in and making a constructive contribution to that region, sir. The contribution that New Zealand is making is relatively small. We're putting forward capital of New Zealand dollars 145 million over 5 years, and we've got callable capital of something like 461 million United States dollars. I hasten to add that I think in our entire history of putting up callable capital, that capital has never been called up. There has never been a financial collapse of an institution, an international institution, that we have put capital towards. So I don't think there is a huge amount of risk in that regard. Mr. Speaker, what are the drivers of our involvement in the bank? They're first of all economic. As I said, our future is linked with the Asia region, and Asian growth is constrained by limited infrastructure investment. If Asia develops its infrastructure and grows economically, that is of direct benefit to us because that is the predominant region into which we are trading. Secondly, sir, it's important because of our connectivity to the market. New Zealand is a small country. Its influence is commensurately small, you would think, but we can develop that influence by the relationships that we develop. The free trade agreement with China is a classic example. The Chinese repeatedly in those negotiations quoted back to us New Zealand's 4 firsts because we had developed the relationship with China and they valued the effort that we made. And as a result of that, New Zealand became the first developed country to get a free trade agreement with China, 10 years ahead of our mates across the Tasman. Well, just as relationship building was important in that, the relationship building that is implicit in our involvement and our constructive contribution to the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank is equally important. And thirdly, just to develop a point I made a moment ago, it was important to commit because we could influence the way in which the bank was set up. We made sure that the bank's membership is broad and open. We made sure that it followed sound governance and appointment processes. We ensured, working with others, that environmental and social issues were to be taken into account by decisions made by the investment bank. And we ensured, working again with others, that it will operate according to sustainable economic and financial principles. As a result, sir, this is an institution that will have proper oversight for investment decisions and for development outcomes. Both of those things are important in a decision to be part of it, and that it will follow international best practice, sir. This is a soundly based decision. This bill is appropriate in committing us to membership of that bank and allowing us to meet the requirements for that membership to happen as soon as the bank comes into existence.
I call Mark Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.